They say jealousy burns like fire. But what if the only way to put that fire out is with kindness? This is the story of King Edward, a powerful ruler of the United States of Aramor, a land where wealth flowed like rivers, but peace was hard to find. And one day, this king learned that envy can destroy even the richest heart. King Edward had everything: gold, fame, a kingdom that adored him. But there was one person who always stood beside him: Minister Daniel. Daniel was young, humble, and incredibly wise. People admired his decisions. They said, if the king is the heart of Aramor, Daniel is its mind. At first, King Edward was proud of him, but slowly, admiration turned into comparison, comparison into discomfort, and discomfort into jealousy. Whenever Daniel entered the court, nobles bowed deeply. Whenever Daniel spoke, the crowd nodded in agreement. And soon, Edward began to wonder, do they respect me or him? He tried to ignore it, but envy doesn't knock once. It keeps coming back, louder each time. One morning, King Edward overheard two guards whispering outside the royal garden. "The trade routes were saved by the minister," one said. "Honestly, he's the real reason this kingdom prospers," replied the other. The king froze. Their words echoed in his mind like a curse. That night, he couldn't sleep. He looked out the palace window and saw Daniel's quarters, a small room glowing with candlelight. Daniel was still awake, working on something, and a bitter thought crossed the king's heart. He's planning something, maybe to outshine me, or worse, to replace me. The next morning, Edward called Daniel to the throne room. "Daniel," he said coldly, "I've heard rumors that you seek my throne. Is it true?" Daniel looked shocked. "My king," he said softly, "I live to serve you. Your glory is my duty." But jealousy doesn't listen to truth. The king ordered him to leave the capital for a temporary assignment, far away from the palace. The court fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Daniel bowed, sadness in his eyes, and left without another word. Weeks passed. Without Daniel's guidance, things began to crumble. Trade declined, disputes increased, and the king, though surrounded by gold, felt strangely empty. He tried to fill that emptiness with more wealth, more praise, more power, but nothing worked. Then one day, news arrived. A nearby state had been struck by a deadly storm. Thousands of people had lost their homes. When the king heard this, he ordered his ministers to send aid, but the officials hesitated. The treasury was mismanaged after Daniel's departure. The king's frustration grew, and then one of the soldiers spoke up. "My lord, Minister Daniel has already gone there, on his own. He took his savings and gathered volunteers to help." The king was stunned. Daniel, the man he'd exiled, was risking his life to serve others, not out of duty, but pure kindness. Days later, the king disguised himself and traveled to the storm-hit village. When he arrived, the sight broke his heart. Houses shattered, people crying, and in the middle of it all, Daniel, drenched in mud, handing out food with a smile. Edward watched silently as Daniel lifted an injured child, wrapped him in a blanket, and said, "Don't worry, little one, you're safe now." Something in the king's heart cracked open. For the first time, he saw not a rival, but a man of pure goodness. He approached Daniel quietly. Daniel turned, surprised to see his king standing there. "My lord," Daniel said, bowing low. But before he could say more, the king stepped forward and placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Rise, Daniel," he said softly. Tears filled Edward's eyes. I sent you away because I was jealous. I feared your light would dim mine, but I was wrong. Your light was guiding me all along." Daniel looked at him gently. "My king, a candle doesn't lose its flame by lighting another. It only makes the world brighter." Those words struck Edward deeper than any sword could. He bowed his head, not as a king, but as a man finally free from envy. When they returned to the capital, the people were astonished. The king himself carried Daniel's bag into the palace. In the next court meeting, King Edward stood before everyone and declared, "From this day on, let no man in this kingdom compete in jealousy. Let us compete in kindness, for that is the only victory that lasts." And he appointed Daniel as his chief advisor once again, not out of favor, but out of respect. Under their joint leadership, the kingdom flourished like never before. Peace returned, trust was rebuilt, and the king's heart, once burning with envy, now glowed with gratitude. Years later, when people spoke of King Edward, they didn't remember his battles or his wealth. They remembered the day he conquered his own heart. Because sometimes the hardest enemy to defeat is the one within us. Jealousy may whisper that others are ahead, but kindness reminds us there's room for everyone to shine. So the next time envy visits your heart, don't fight it with anger. Fight it with kindness. Because as King Edward learned, a kind heart always wins in the end.